everyone. I know there's nobody watching, but I am going to finish out today, and I had to go to therapy. That's why I had to stop at 1:30, but I'm back. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you to whoever is watching the replay. If you watch the replay, thank you so much for supporting me. All right, we'll get this day going, and I don't think we have too much longer. All right, here we go, y'all.
Your Honor, permission to retrieve evidence and publish evidence. Thank you. Mr. Pierce, I'm just going to hand you as previously introduced as case 15. Yes. I have some cards I want to take that out. Do you see on there, though, while you do that, do you see a case number?
Yes.
Is that the same case number that we're talking about?
Yes, this is the correct case number as well as the correct container number. This is the barcode that I previously mentioned that has the police case number and the unique container number that matches the property receipt and the contents of the package.
So I'm going to ask you to take out that firearm as well as the other contents. Now you mentioned a couple of terms, some firearm, magazine, cartridge, etc. Can you please, when you pull it out, can you explain to the jury what each one is?
Some of the contents are fastened to the original container for safety purposes. So this is going to be the semi-automatic firearm. This is the magazine, which contains the cartridges that are loaded into the magazine, and the magazine is inserted into the magazine well. This is the slide. You will rack this rearward and release it. The cartridge is stripped from the top of the magazine. It's going to be seated into the chamber. This is a chamber. Pull the trigger. The projectile, commonly referred to as a bullet, is shot towards its intended target. What is left is the casing that is ejected from the ejection port. And again, this will land in and around the person who is shooting this firearm.
Do you mind actually opening up where the casings are and showing that so the members of the jury? Scissors.
Scissors?
Yeah. If it's easier too, I have a vector vision.
So these are the casings that I gotta explain this.
Well, before we do that, can you just show them what we're talking about when we're talking about casings?
Okay, these are casings. This is the head stamp of a casing. The head stamp of the casing is going to contain the caliber of the bullet and the manufacturer. So in this instance, this casing was manufactured by Federal Cartridge. That's what the FC on the head stamp stands for, and it also bears 9mm markings. This is a 9mm caliber firearm. So the firing pin of the hammer is going to strike in the middle. I know it's hard, you can't see it. It's going to leave a unique shape. The detonating charge is going to be somewhere underneath the lip of this casing, and the gases are going to shoot through a small hole. This briefly expands, and the projectile, which is the bullet, is what is shot through the barrel. The casing is ejected from here.
Now you mentioned that when a firearm, somebody pulls a trigger, that casing will end up around or near where that person shot. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if, for example, I'm standing here, I shoot right here, the casing will fall somewhere around my person?
Somewhere in the vicinity, depending on the power, how powerful the firearm is, and even it can also be determined of how the person is holding the firearm when they're shooting it.
Okay. Now, I know you were about to explain about those casings that you collected. Can you walk us through what you did in this case?
Sure. So again, I was assigned this firearm. I retrieved the container from our secure vault. I bring this property back to my desk. We have an online evidence tracking system. So through each step of the process, I tell my evidence tracking system what step I'm currently at. And then I begin the practical work on this case, which I will have to refer to my property receipt to tell me because this case was over 3 years old and I work with a high volume of firearms. So
If it's easier to, I can take that back.
okay, yeah, that would be useful.
Do you mind just putting it back?
Sure. Okay, so this casework, we work off of, again, a property receipt. There's actual, the laboratory analysis report, as you can see, it's sort of a checklist. And the police officer or lead investigator is going to check off what type of work, what type of processing that they're requesting to be done with this firearm. So this laboratory analysis report, the lead investigator is requesting biology and latents. Since they request biology, that means that I have to swab this gun for any possible DNA that may be uncovered later on. So that is the first thing that is done with the firearm. I open up the contents with protective equipment, which is going to be latex gloves, a lab coat, and a surgical mask. So I don't transfer my DNA accidentally to the evidence. I open up the box, and now I make sure the contents inside the box, inside the container, match up with what the investigator translated to the property receipt. Everything matches up, caliber, make, model, which I'm going to have to explain because do you want me to explain that? Okay. So this can be confusing because the information that I uncovered when I opened up the container revealed that this is a 9mm caliber, unknown make and model firearm with no serial number. However, a firearms manufacturing company that is known for just making firearm parts has an engraving on the handle, on the grip of the firearm. That company is known as Polymer 80 Inc. So I have to explain to them what privately made firearms are, which are widely known as ghost guns. This company, Polymer 80 Inc., circumvents the federal requirements of having firearms registered and serialized because you can go to their website and just order a gun kit. A gun kit would be a frame that is mailed to you in a jig, a cutout, and it has simple instructions. And that is what is known as an 80% firearm because it's nearly constructed. The only thing you would need to do at that point is acquire a slide and a barrel from another firearm company. And in a simple internet search, anyone can put that gun together. That is what's known as privately made firearms or ghost guns. And they are nicknamed ghost guns because they're not traceable. They don't have a serial number. The firearm in this container, to my surprise, was a ghost gun, has no serial number. The lead investigator had recorded that the model number is a PF 940C. That is correct for the firearm company that makes frames, but it is not a factual for recording purposes. I cannot actually say that that is the make and model of this firearm. So for documentation, we record it as a 9mm unknown make and model with no serial number.
Did you test fire with this gun?
Yes, I did.
Can you walk us through what the process is? I know you mentioned getting masked up, gloved up, but can you walk us through the actual process of test firing a firearm?
So the investigator requested for biology and latents. The first step before I test fire this firearm, again, is once I have established that the actual contents in the package match up with the property receipt and I made my necessary corrections, this being an unknown make and model, I recorded the information on the property receipt and in our online tracking system. I have my protective equipment on, gloves, surgical mask, and a lab coat. And I'm going to set aside 3 swabs, and I will swab with a Q-tip and treated water the front sight of the firearm, which is the barrel, and the actual hand grip and the trigger of the firearm. And then we're also going to swab the magazine. The reason why we swab the top of the magazine, which is known as the magazine lips, is because the proper way to load ammunition into a magazine is to hold it with one hand and press down on top of the magazine, usually with your thumb. That's going to present DNA in and around the lip of the magazine, so we swab the top of the magazine. So those 3 swabs are then packaged into a brown paper bag, sealed with all of the pedigree information, being the case number, container number, make, model, caliber, firearm. It's also going to have my name and my badge number. And that package is then sealed and set aside to be sent to our central evidence reception center to be forwarded to the biology section for processing. The next step in the process, since this investigator requested for latents for the actual cartridge, which is the bullet that was submitted with this case. I will take it to, we have a super glue fumigating chamber, which is a square shaped glass contraption. And I will remove the requested cartridge and from the package, place it in the center of the container. And we will super glue fumigate it. And the actual ingredient is cyanoacrylate ester, which anyone can buy. If you have crazy glue in your house, that is what it is. That is what super glue is. So we apply a dime to quarter-sized amount onto a small aluminum tray, place that onto a heating pad, and we close the super glue container, and it fumigates for about a half-hour cycle. Once that's completed, I will remove the evidence, which was the cartridge, and place that back into its original packaging, seal it, and date it with my initials and batch number. Now, finally, we begin the test firing process, which is the operability. Again, with gloves, protective equipment, I will perform a function test on this firearm. Now, a basic function test consists of removing a firearm from the package, racking the slide back, and making sure that the chamber closes, locks, and battery. I will also be checking for any loose parts, any damaged parts, like a physical safety, any slide locks, making sure that they all are in serviceable and safe operating condition. Once I determine that this firearm is safe to operate, I will then point it downrange in our indoor range in a safe manner, and I will dry fire. Dry fire just means pulling the trigger with no ammunition. So what I'm checking for when I pull the trigger is an audible click as well as a physical click, which lets me know that this firearm can shoot ammunition. The audible click tells me it has a working firing pin. At that point, I will use an engraving tool, and I will take 2 9mm test fires from our ammunition storage closet, and I am going to take that engraving tool and engrave on my test fire casings PD 22, which stands for Police Department, 22 being the year of this case, the last 6 numbers of this case number, which is 210513, and then my initials JF and T1, which stands for test fire 1. And the same information will go on the second test fire casing, but that will have T2 for test fire 2. I will take those test fires that I prepared and load them into the magazine and successfully test fire that firearm. The casings, again, land in and around my person. I retrieve those casings from the floor of our firing range, and I know that those are the test fire casings that I just produced because they have my initials on the casings. At that point, test firing is complete. This firearm was successfully test fired, and then it's on to a brief microscopic examination where I compare both of my test fires, and I choose the one that I feel like has a more obvious ejection mark, which is a tool mark that occurs on each casing when it is ejected during firing. Once I have determined one casing is better for comparison versus the other, that casing is then oriented and entered into our NIBIN software. NIBIN is an act.
We don't need to talk about that.
I don't need to talk about NIBIN? Okay, so then the test fire and operability is complete. And that's all work that I have done with this case.
Were you able to confirm that this firearm itself was operable?
Yes.
Was there any evidence of any kind of malfunction or misfire or anything like that?
No, if there is an issue that occurs in the realm of troubleshooting, I actually record that information on the property receipt and in this small box, additional notes on the laboratory analysis form. I didn't have to record anything because there were no issues. There were no troubleshooting issues during my operability test.
Now, I know that you said that the casings you shot were around your area, correct?
Yes.
And those were collected?
Yes.
Great. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
You can sit down.
Well, that was a pretty fast witness. Oh. Okay, well, we'll zoom down. My therapy really hurt my neck today.
Raise your hand. Do you sign for the testimony that you give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you please introduce yourselves to the members of the jury?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My name is Cosette, C-O-S-E-T-T-E, Alvarez, and I am a forensic biologist with the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office Crime Laboratory.
And how long have you been employed there?
It will be 25 years in 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what your duties are at the crime lab?
Yes, sure. So my duties consist of performing DNA analysis on various types of samples for different criminal cases, and as well as performing a peer review of those cases, which basically means making sure that the data obtained is accurate and the results are reproducible and accurate and without errors.
Can you just tell the members of the jury briefly about your educational background?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Florida International University, as well as a certification in forensic science from FIU as well.
And in addition to your education, do you get any specialized education or training in the field of forensic DNA analysis?
Yes, so essentially before I'm able to work case samples, I have to undergo a series of qualifying exams to be able to demonstrate that I can perform the tests that are needed to be done routinely and that I can obtain reliable results. And
how do you maintain your education in this field after it's completed?
Right, so to continue performing my duties, I am required to undergo what's known as continuing education yearly, at least 8 hours of continuing education, and that is attending conferences or participating in training within the laboratory.
Now, the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office Crime Lab, is that an accredited lab?
Yes, it is an accredited lab.
Who accredits it?
So the agency is known as ANAB, which, forgive me because it's an acronym within an acronym. I don't know why they did that, but it basically stands for American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board.
Okay. And do you know how long the lab has been accredited for?
Yes, so the lab has been accredited since 1989 by an organization that was called ASCLD Lab, American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors, and then they merged with ANAB back in 2019. So since 1989, basically since the lab has conducted DNA testing, we've been accredited.
And what does it actually mean to be accredited?
So accreditation basically means that the laboratory meets and exceeds basically protocols that are in place for reliable and accurate scientific testing.
Now, is it part of the lab's requirements that each analyst take a proficiency test semi-annually?
Yes, in order to be able to still continue doing casework, performing casework, there has to be a proficiency test done every 6 months, basically.
And where do those tests come from?
There are different agencies that can administer it, and the agency that administers ours is called Collaborative Testing Services, and they're accredited and they're known. It's an agency that's known for providing this service to many labs within the U.S.
And when you're doing these tests, do you know the results before you take them?
No.
Have you ever failed a proficiency test?
No, I have not.
Now, when it comes to biology and genetics, are you also including certain statistics in that?
Yes, so part of the training deals with being able to perform statistical calculations after results are obtained, after data is obtained.
And do you get specialized training for that as well?
Yes, it has its own training that includes lectures that were part of my degree in biology, and also training within the laboratory that pertains specifically to performing calculations for different casework samples.
And roughly how many times have you conducted a serological or DNA analysis?
So I have done thousands of tests. So serology, by the way, it's different from DNA testing. That's just preliminary testing for the presence of biological fluids such as blood, semen, saliva, etc. Not every case has that. In fact, this particular case did not have serological testing done. But yes, that's different from DNA testing, and that's considered, serology is considered a preliminary testing.
Okay. Now, let's talk about DNA for a moment and DNA analysis. Can you actually explain what DNA is?
Yes, it's basically the blueprint, genetic blueprint of all living things. It's within our cells, and in this case, forensically, it's what allows us to differentiate between individuals and allows me to make comparisons between data that's obtained in, say, evidence samples and compared to data obtained from like a blood or saliva swab from an individual and try to determine a common origin if there's one.
Okay. And where is DNA actually found in the body?
So it's found all throughout your body, in your skin cells, saliva, blood, biological fluids, hair, like I said, skin cells. When you touch things, you deposit DNA cells from the skin. And those are some of the examples.
Okay. And I know you mentioned blood, saliva, skin. Are the DNA that is in my blood, for example, the same that is in my hair?
Yes.
Okay. Now, each person's DNA, is that unique?
Yes, with the exception of course, identical twins who have the same set of DNA markers.
Now, can one person's DNA change into another? For example, can my DNA become your DNA?
No.
Okay. Even if I mix two DNA samples together?
So if you mix two samples together, you'll get a mixture of DNA profiles, but it doesn't morph into one. You have a representation from both sets of genetic markers.
Okay. Now, when you're looking at somebody's DNA profile, can you tell certain things about them, like hair color, gender, skin color, or not skin color, excuse me, eye color?
So for our purposes, no. The markers that we test in the laboratory, they do not code for hair color or skin color or any of those things. It's basically just data, as if to be able to distinguish between samples. So everyone has their own unique code, and it's basically represented in terms of numbers. It's almost like everybody has their own cell phone number, and that number is unique to the person, so that if I dial a specific number, I should only get that specific person. So that's basically a representation of what we see.
Can you go through the different steps of DNA, the process for DNA analysis?
Yes, so it can be a lengthy process. I'll just do a summary. So we have what we know as the extraction step. And this step is basically to be able to separate the cells from the sample that is provided. A lot of the case I have, samples come in
So I was muted
in
that
the form
whole
of
time.
swabs, like cotton applicators.
Talking.
So it's basically separating the
back.
skin cells from the cotton fabric itself. So that would be step one, and purifying that DNA. So then comes a step of quantification, which basically means we're through the use of instruments, we want to estimate more or less how much DNA there is in the sample. And this is important for the following step, which is known as the amplification step, in which multiple copies, using instruments, multiple copies are made of these different regions that we test through using a series of instruments. I don't know if you guys have heard of PCR, especially with the pandemic, when we were asked, well, did you get a PCR test? Okay, so that protocol, PCR, that's the amplification step. So after multiple copies are made of the different DNA regions that we analyze, we're doing this to be able to have a visual representation on an instrument. So after making multiple copies, these areas or fragments are tagged with different colors, and it allows us to see them on an instrument. So this is the analysis portion. So after the analysis portion, there's an interpretation step. So after the analysis, I obtain data. And this data, like I said, is in the form of numbers. Everybody has their own set of numbers, like a phone number. And it is shown as peaks, and each peak is one number. So in the interpretation step, I'm basically comparing the peaks from the evidence samples to those of whatever standards I've received from an individual to see if there's a match, if they're the same, basically. And the final step would be, let's say we have determined, or I have determined that there's a match, like the DNA information from the evidence matches that of the standard. The next step would be to basically speak as to the significance of that match. What that means is what are the chances that somebody else in the population can have that same set of numbers or that same DNA profile. So it gives weight to the actual match.
Now, when you're doing all that work, are there steps taken to ensure and prevent contamination?
Yes, of course, every single step, at every single step, there are different ways of minimizing contamination.
Now, after you do all these steps, including the statistical analysis that you mentioned a minute ago, is your work reviewed?
Yes, it is peer reviewed
Why?
because it's a way to make sure that the data is accurate and reliable, as I said. And there are two different types of reviews. One is a technical review, which in this case, the reviewer will go through the data obtained and they reach their own conclusions, and then they compare it to what I obtain on my own conclusions. And then there's an administrative review, which is basically making sure that there are no typographical errors, that there are no mistakes with spelling or grammar or things like that, but that's the administrative side.
And in this case, what type of analysis did you use?
So the DNA analysis performed here is known as STR DNA analysis.
And what is that?
That stands for short tandem, TANDEM, repeats DNA analysis. Like I said before, what I'm trying to do is test different areas in the DNA molecule that have these numerical representations, so this genetic information that is very different from individual to individual. So these fragments in the DNA are highly repetitive, but the length, but the number of repeated fragments differ from individual to individual. That's what allows me to make these comparisons and determinations.
I think you may have answered this question already, but how actually is a match determined?
So actually, no, that's a good question because a match is determined by looking at the data present in an evidence sample, like location by location, and then comparing that data to the data obtained, the DNA data obtained from a standard sample. Standard sample is like a buccal swab from an individual, or if they took blood from the individual, that it's particular to them. So whatever is obtained for that standard gets compared to the evidence data. And if all the numbers line up between the evidence and the standard sample, that's considered a match.
Okay, and if those samples match, what is the next step?
So then we would have a statistical calculation performed, basically, like I said before, to determine the probability that somebody else would have that same DNA profile.
What calculation did you use to generate that statistic in this case?
So for a match probability statistic, we would use what's known as the product rule. And that is a statistical calculation that is made to obtain a number that represents the probability that somebody else in the population has that matching DNA profile.
Okay, and when doing that calculation, do you use a database with many different types of DNAs, different races, different ethnical backgrounds? Excuse me.
Yes, so a database is used that contains the frequency of observance of the genetic information for all the DNA types found, so that this product rule calculation can be performed by multiplying all of these different frequencies across. We have 21 different locations in the DNA molecule, and this statistical calculation allows us to multiply all the frequencies, and usually if there's a lot of information, it ends up being a pretty big number at the very end.
Can you explain what a DNA mixture is?
Yes, so we have what is called a single profile, which is what we normally see when I obtain a DNA swab from an individual. You would expect to only see one DNA profile, right? So a mixture of DNA profiles is any sample that you have that gives you more than.
I'm really interested in DNA. I really am. I like to hear about DNA and everything and how it works and all that stuff. All right, back on.
One DNA profile, so two or more DNA profiles within a sample.
Okay, and is there a difference between DNA mixtures with a major and minor component and an indistinguishable mixture?
Okay, so a mixture that has a major or minor DNA component to them, all that means is that within the sample itself, there's obviously more than one person. That's what makes it a mixture. But within that sample, there's a predominant profile or an individual that deposited more DNA than others. So you would see it as a predominant DNA profile. And then what we call minor is whatever is left other than that predominant or major profile. So an undistinguishable would be where you have multiple individuals, but you can't really, because of the way that the mixture formed itself, you can't really separate where nothing really stands out. They could be both in equal amounts, or the components of the mixture could be in equal amounts, and that's what makes it undistinguishable.
Okay. And can you briefly explain how you go about interpreting DNA mixtures?
Yes, so a mixture that has 2, 3, 4 individuals, the first step would be to try to determine how many possible contributors are in the mixture. After that, as in this case, through the use of ratios, we can approximate, and looking at the mixture itself, we can tell if there's a predominant DNA profile that we would call a major profile. And if there is a predominant profile, then the next step would be to compare that to whatever standards are available, whatever data we have, in this case from a standard sample, compared to that evidence.
So that was a lot of background about these. Let me ask you, have you received any items in this case to analyze under case number PD220625210513?
Yes, I have.
What did you receive?
Your Honor, if I may refer to my notes briefly? Yes, I have the report. Yes, so I basically received swabs from a firearm.
Where were these items located prior to your examination?
They were located in our evidence vaults with the evidence custodian within the laboratory.
Okay, when you received these items, were they sealed?
Yes, they were sealed, and they had the correct identifier, and they were intact.
Okay, any evidence of tampering whatsoever?
No, I would have indicated that in my notes.
Did you personally open the package and remove the components of it?
Yes, I did.
And I know you mentioned a couple of swabs. Did that also include a buccal swab?
There was a standard, that's what we call a standard sample swab, present as part of the items.
Okay. Now, what did you do with those items prior to the DNA analysis?
So the items came in the form of swabs, like the cotton tip applicators, and I basically taped them to a 3x5, it looks like a 3x5 index card, and put them in a foil-lined envelope and seal them, just to retain them to take them through DNA analysis at a later time.
Okay, and I want to back up because we mentioned swabs like buccal swabs, and those buccal swabs were the defendant, is that correct?
There were swabs from the subject, yes.
Okay, and were there other swabs that were submitted to the lab as well?
Yes, there were, but only one set was from, like, as a standard.
Right. The other swabs, though, where were they from?
They were from a firearm.
On which items exactly did you perform that DNA analysis?
So I performed DNA analysis on 3 items. One which was a swab from the front sight of the firearm. Front sight. Sight?
S-I-G-H-T.
Yes. Front sight. Yes. There was a swab from the firearm, all around the firearm, and then lastly a swab of the magazine of the firearm.
And what analysis did you do on those?
Those had DNA analysis, STR DNA analysis performed on them.
Were you able to obtain a DNA profile from these swabs?
Only from 2 of the swabs. The swab from the front sight of the firearm did not contain enough DNA for me to finish the whole process.
Okay, and after you get those profiles, what do you do next?
Well, the next step would be to interpret whatever data I have. In this case, there were 2 separate samples that provided mixtures of DNA profile.
Okay, what was the result of that comparison?
Basically, I will start with the first one, which was the swab of the firearm. And that sample generated a mixture of DNA profiles. So it was basically at least 3 contributors, including at least 1 male, but there was a predominant or major DNA profile that was obtained at 18 of the 21 locations tested, and that predominant female DNA profile was found to match, and we call it the partial profile. This was found to match the standard obtained from subject D link.
Now, what was the statistic that you calculated for matching that?
So basically, the result of the statistical calculation was that the probability of finding a DNA profile in the population matching this predominant female DNA profile was 1 in 28.78 septillion.
Septillion, that's a very big number.
Yes.
Do you know just offhand what the population of the Earth is?
It's now about 8 billion.
Okay. And septillion would be significantly larger than that?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that one swab. What about the other swabs?
So there was another swab, and that was a swab of the magazine, and that swab also generated.
So these people that do this DNA, They are so smart. Like, I wish I would have gotten into something like that. But there's too much math, man. Too much math. All right, back on.
Generated a mixture of DNA profiles, so more than one DNA profile. And that was of at least 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. But that specific DNA sample was a DNA sample with very low-level DNA. And I was not able to make any comparisons because of the type of DNA that was obtained. Again, it was low-level. It was not very informative. So the conclusion was that due to the complexity, there were no comparisons made.
And now, after you obtained that match, what conclusion did you make after all your work that was done?
Well, basically, after performing the statistical calculation, which with the number that I provided, it was determined that because the probability is so rare, it is unreasonable to conclude that somebody else would be the source of that predominant DNA profile found in the mixture of DNA profiles.
Is there a threshold frequency that you also use?
For that specifically, yes, and it's 1 in 320 billion.
Why do you use that threshold?
We use that threshold because it's an approximation of 1,000 times the population of the US itself, which is a little over 300 million. So this is 1,000 times that. So anything above that, we basically conclude that it is unreasonable that somebody else, that's not the individual matching, would be the source of that DNA profile.
Okay. And if you know the answer, do you know what the population of Miami-Dade County is?
It's a little over 2 million.
And State Park?
It's, I guess, around 20 million, 23 million.
And you mentioned that the United States is about 300 million?
Yes, 340 million.
The entire Earth is 8 billion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So ma'am, you said that as far as the firearm is concerned, you only found testable DNA on 2 of the swabs, correct?
There were only 2 that had enough DNA present for me to perform the full DNA analysis.
Yeah. One was the magazine, and the other was just the firearm, correct?
Correct.
Any specific area of the firearm?
The description I obtained was just swab of firearm, no real description as to where.
So we can't say precisely on what part of the firearm the swab came from.
No, I cannot. No.
So you said that there was a mixture of DNA, and I'm focusing on the swab of the firearm right now. You said there was a mixture of DNA, including at least 3 people, and at least one of them is male. Is that correct?
That's right.
Now, from that swab, were you able to obtain that complete male profile?
No, I was not.
So if you were to receive, for example, a DNA swab from a male who may or may not have come in contact with that gun, and you had that swab, would you have been able to test it against this swab of the firearm?
In this case, I couldn't have made a direct comparison because of the complexity of that minor component that I spoke about. The matching profile, the standard profile matched the predominant, what was clear was the predominant DNA profile. That was a female. So anything, including the male, would be part of that minor component that I wouldn't be able to really make any determinations as to whether somebody is included or not.
So even if you had a profile from a male who could have come in contact with that gun, and even though you wouldn't be able to match it, you can, as you sit here, you can tell us, you are able to tell us definitively that at least one male at some point came in contact with this gun because their DNA was on it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, with major and minor profiles, is it sometimes, not necessarily all the time, but sometimes isn't it common for the major contributor to a DNA mixture to be the last person to have contact with the firearm or with the object that you're testing?
That's very difficult to ascertain. We really cannot, as a DNA analyst, I cannot tell you based on what the mixture looks like, when there is no time, really no time frame or how. None of those things can be answered, only the data basically that I obtain.
Let me give you an example, and you can tell me if this is reasonably possible based on your knowledge and expertise. Let's say that an individual, a man named Pedro, grabbed this firearm that you tested and pistol whipped somebody with it. Right? Pistol whipped somebody with it multiple times. Then, 5 days later, a female named Daisy shoots that firearm. And then shortly after that, that gun is seized and taken to police and ultimately finds its way to your desk. Is it likely or reasonable that The minor contributor could be the man Pedro, who I just mentioned, and the major contributor could be Daisy because she was the one who most recently had the gun and fired it.
Well, no, we can't really say that because there are so many variables that determine how much DNA is left on an item. People, what we call are shedders, some are non-shedders of DNA. Some people shed DNA cells more than others. It's very difficult to determine really what level of activity or order of activities or anything of the sort.
And I understand that you can't tell us exactly because you don't have all the information. You only have limited information.
Correct.
But based on the information I just gave you, can you reasonably rule out that scenario that I just laid out for you?
No, I cannot rule out any scenario because I can only tell you what the data says.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all.
Of course.
To be clear, the majority of the DNA was female belonging to D-Link.
The predominant profile in the mixture, or what we call the major profile, was a profile matching that of subject D-Link.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
They call Danny Morales, but can we go sidebar?
Oh gosh, already another break for these people. They take an awful lot of breaks, huh? Let's see here. We can zoom. It's hard to see the mouse out here in the sunlight. I'm sitting outside. Oh, I should probably go to YouTube. Hope you guys are enjoying this trial. I still can't get over the fact how she got pregnant by that guy in jail while he's in jail. I keep losing the mouse. No. There we go. I wonder why he stopped like that. All right, let's get this day going and get it over with, huh? I don't know why it's acting like this.
Resided to where the body of the victim was found.
Did he also advise of the incident location itself?
1237 Northwest 14th Street in Homestead.
And is that in Miami-Dade County?
That is in Miami-Dade County.
Oops, sorry, guys.
Now, I know you said that you were handling the phones that day for homicide. Did you contact anyone in reference to this case?
Yeah, so the structure of the homicide bureau is one person is handling the phones, and essentially there's a team that's on call. That on-call team that day happened to be my team as well, although I was working the midnight shift. So I essentially called my own sergeant, who called out the rest of the team.
Did you yourself respond to that incident location?
I did.
When you arrived, what did you do, if anything at all?
So I was the first detective that arrived on scene. Officer Nicholson and several other Homestead Police Department officers were already there, as they are the initial department that responded. So as the first detective that was there, I went to Officer Nicholson. He's the lead officer on the scene. At that point, there was a female that was later identified as DaisyLink, sitting essentially on the scene. She was kind of lingering around, but seated in front of the scene, which was a little odd to me. And that's when I approached her.
Okay, now you said it was a little odd that she was kind of lingering around. Why?
Well, primarily she was in the middle of the scene, which is not something that you normally see. Usually the scene is secure. There's not anybody walking around or anything of that nature. On top of the fact that she was a reporting person, she had a relationship to the victim. Those were just things that were, raised a couple red flags for me.
Okay, so when you approached her, what, if anything, happened?
So I approached her, I verified her name, her relationship. I tried to get some further information on who this person.
So again, we're judging this girl after she allegedly was assaulted, outed her husband, How is she supposed to act? Nobody knows how they're going to act in a crisis. So, come on. Why are we judging her? All right, back on. I want to hear what they got to say.
Person is and what her involvement is, aside from being the one that called 911. She was very apprehensive, almost like irritated with my presence. At that point,
relevance with the strike.
Just one second.
Now they're putting words into this girl's mouth. Or how she felt. Wow. I can see that they haven't been real fair with the poor girl. So I wonder what's going to happen here. And why they would say that in front of the jury? That was just wrong. I'm not saying what she did was right. Allegedly. We haven't even gotten to the end.
Okay.
How do we know? That's why he's not the judge and jury in this. Because I have a feeling they'd have done sent her to the prison already.
They're claiming that she was a victim, that she was scared. That they couldn't take her to the homicide headquarters. They took her to robbery instead. The defense is claiming that Ms. Link was acting self-defense, was scared, etc. Her being aggressive to detectives trying to question her is entirely relevant to the determinations that they subsequently make, including bringing her to the scene, placing her back in the police vehicle, taking her to headquarters to interview her. It's entirely relevant.
So, Judge, and I know we already discussed this, but my concern is that this witness was teetering on volunteering that Ms. Link was refusing to cooperate, refusing to speak to the police, adding issues that he wasn't asked about, saying that she was aggressive or what have you. That's improper. He's trying to inject himself and make an argument to the jury. He needs to answer the question, and I think he's going to do that now. At least I hope he will.
That's a question that's asked on some level. It's really little issues, so we don't go into areas that we're not supposed to detect it.
So am I allowed to ask if she was being aggressive?
You can ask what was her demeanor.
Well, I want
How was
clarity.
she acting? What did she look like? Was she red? Was she flushed? Etc. How was she clothed? Yeah.
Okay.
But it can't just be to do an encounter her. And what was that like? And blah, and you have a narrative with adjectives that are not responsive.
I understand that the
I know that
detectives and stuff are a good judge of
self-defense
character.
and what you won't say
But for
is
him to
that-
say
so
that
at
in
some
an
point-
open
It might not
court,
be evidence, Your Honor, but it
It's
does
not
open
fair.
doors to certain arguments, just like I mentioned that I think it was yesterday too, when I filed a motion for request for judicial notice. It might not be evidence, but it opens the door to certain arguments.
At some point, it may be too much to prove that. So right now, the self-defense claim, it's there, mostly because of the opening statement, and a little bit based on a hypothetical that Cosette Alvarez answered. Some of it regarding the pictures of her injuries, those not evidence yet. But I would just be careful eliciting information at this stage when a full self-defense claim hasn't been laid yet in front of the jury. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, does that make sense, Mr. Tomas? So there may be an opportunity where, unfortunately, if you want to make a call to call back witnesses or call rebuttal witnesses, depending on whether or not the self-defense claim is fully flushed out, that may be the more appropriate time, okay? All right, I think we're on the same page. Go ahead and bring back the jury.
All right, the jurors.
This is one to touch on there. And all my jurors are accounted for, lawyers, is linked to NBC, thank you.
proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. So detective, let's back up a little bit, okay? You've mentioned DaisyLink, Miss Link a few times. Do you see DaisyLink in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Can you please point her out and describe her by what she's wearing?
She's sitting right over here. It's a black floral shirt.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is identified with the Okay. Now, going back to when you arrived on scene, when you first arrived on scene, there were police officers there?
Homestead police officer.
Okay. And DaisyLink was on scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Where exactly was she on scene, if you remember?
So directly in front of 1237 Northwest 14th Street. Right in
her residence?
the residence, yes, right in front of the door.
Did you approach her?
I did.
How was her demeanor when you approached?
So originally she's sitting down. So, you know, from a distance, you just see a woman sitting down. But once I came up to her, it's when she became a little aggressive, in my opinion.
Okay. Were you concerned with her presence on scene?
100%, yes.
Why?
It's not normal to have somebody sitting in the middle of a crime scene. Regardless, this crime scene was a little larger than normal, and she was sitting right in the middle of it.
When you first approached her, was she a person of interest?
At that point, no. I had just gotten there. All I knew was that she had a relationship with the victim, and that's from what Officer Nicholson told me.
Did you attempt to remove her from the scene so that way you can do your police work?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did that entail?
So interacting with her and trying to verify her information, and I like to respect the person I'm speaking to, so I asked her her name and whatnot. That's when she became a little aggressive, ultimately
So before we get to that, tell me exactly what you mean by she was being aggressive.
It was more of her demeanor, just the lack of wanting to cooperate, lack of wanting.
Objection, improper comments, and speculation.
To be clear though, she does not have to cooperate with you.
She does not cooperate.
Now, moving forward, what, if anything, happened with Miss Link between you and her?
So Miss Link, when I went to detain her and put handcuffs on her, attempted to grab a white chair that was next to me, or next to her, and tried to swing it. That time I was able to detain her, and with the help of Homestead police officer that came and helped me as well.
When you were detaining her, what did you specifically do?
I put handcuffs on her, held her arms as any other arrest would take place.
Why were you detaining her at that point?
At that point, one, she's in the middle of the crime scene. Two, she became a person of interest, and we wanted to just remove that person from the crime scene. That way there's no evidence that was tampered with. That way she would be monitored inside of a police vehicle, and we can transport her to our headquarters for an interview.
Did you also pat her down when you detained her?
I did, yes.
Why did you pat her down?
That's normal officer safety. Make sure she doesn't have any weapons or anything on her that can harm me or herself.
Did you locate anything on her person?
Yeah, there was a cell phone and a car key.
Okay, and did that car key belong to any vehicle in particular?
The car key ended up belonging to a Chevy Trax.
Now, when you found that car key, or if you noticed it at all when you were patting Miss Link down, what, if anything, was the defendant's reaction to you finding that car key?
So the car key was in her pocket, and she attempted to, remember she's sitting down at this point when I go to detain her, she attempted to kind of roll over onto that side to kind of hide what she had in her pocket.
Objection, speculation.
Did you do anything else on scene?
At that point, we placed her in the vehicle, and I was instructed to author some warrants.
Okay. Before we talk about your warrants and the process for obtaining a warrant, let's talk about if you contacted anybody.
I think he
other than
really
the
don't
other
like
homicide
this
detectives.
girl.
Did you speak to anybody?
Yeah, so there was two children at the residence. I learned that their grandmother was local. I contacted the grandmother to have them come get picked up.
And did she respond to the scene?
She did, yes.
Was anybody else with her?
Crystal Barreto, which ends up being, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, DaisyLink's sister, which was the daughter of the grandmother.
Okay. Now, when they responded to the scene, both the defendant's grandmother, Josephina Perez, as well as Crystal Barreto, did you approach them?
Yeah, so they weren't allowed to the immediate scene. Obviously, it's cordoned off by crime scene tape. So I walked to them at the intersection, and at that point, that's when I kind of informed them of everything that was going on.
And what was either of their reaction when you informed them what was going on?
So Crystal Barreto immediately, spontaneously stated the words, "If he is dead, Daisy must have shot him."
Now, to be clear again, Crystal doesn't have to speak to you.
Correct.
She doesn't have to cooperate.
No.
Did you attempt to gain further information after Ms. Barreto spontaneously stated this?
Object move to strike as to the hearsay statements. It's just.
Wait a minute, wasn't that just
Judge, can we go
hearsay? Unalived. Daisy must have done it. That's coming from someone else's mouth. Wow, I'd be upset if I was her too. You know, you're supposed to have a fair trial.
So, a storyline for me.
I'm sorry, at that point,
It kind of built like a storyline for me.
It built like a,
Storyline?
Now, again, Ms. Barreto, her mother, even the defendant, don't have to cooperate with you, right?
That's correct.
Did you seek to obtain any additional information from Ms. Barreto?
Yeah, I attempted to speak to her and figure out what her relationship was and what information she may have to provide us. And at that point, she didn't.
Objection, there's no question pending on that topic.
so the answer is yes, we tried to obtain information, and now Mr. Jimenez wants to ask another question.
Did she provide any information?
She did not provide any information.
Did she refuse to provide information?
Yes,
What was her demeanor when you were trying to obtain this information?
just a normal conversation, but didn't want to provide information.
Now let's back up. I know you mentioned how homicide works a little bit, but can you explain how homicide teams themselves works in your unit?
Okay, so there's essentially 8 homicide teams, 4 in the day shift, 4 in the afternoon shift. Each team has a supervisor, and under that supervisor, normally 4 to 5 detectives within that team.
And when there is a homicide, is there a lead appointed, or you guys kind of just do your own thing?
No, so there's a rotation of teams, and then within your team, there's also a rotation of who gets cases. So that way, the same detective doesn't get multiple cases back to back.
Were you the lead on this case?
I was not the
Who
lead.
was?
Detective Joseph Cruz.
Now, when leads are appointed, are you relaying all the information that you learned to the lead?
Yes, we provide any information that we learn to the lead detective.
Are you also given assignments by the lead?
Yes,
Now, what if any assignments did Detective Cruz give you?
I was given the task of authoring a search warrant for the residence.
And the residence being that 1237 address that you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about warrants for a second. What actually is a search warrant?
So essentially, it's a document that is requesting to go and receive, obtain property from a location or vehicle, even a device that is reviewed by myself, a supervisor, an attorney, ultimately the judge either granting it or denying it, and allowing us to enter that structure.
Now, I know you kind of mentioned the process in which, whether no judge grants it or not, but I want to back up even further. Is this something that you just write up and then walk into the house, or is there actually a process for that?
No, it's a very lengthy process.
Okay, and you mentioned an attorney. What attorney has to review a search warrant?
The state attorney, whoever's on call for that week.
Okay, and a judge also has to review that?
Correct.
And they have the choice whether or not they can grant it or not?
Correct.
Was a search warrant granted in this case?
Yes.
And that search warrant was for that residence?
Yes.
Was that warrant executed?
Yes.
Okay, what, if anything, let me ask you this. Did you execute that warrant?
I was part of the team that executed it. Yes.
And what does it mean when you execute it?
So essentially, documentation of that location that we have a warrant for, searching that residence for any items of evidentiary value. That's the gist of it, yeah.
Did you walk into that residence?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you see there?
So the house is, there's obviously children items in there, female items in there, and adult male clothing and shoes.
Was that the only warrant that was executed in this case?
No, there was other warrants.
Can you tell us what other warrants?
I had authored a vehicle warrant for a Chevy Trax, and also a cellular device that I obtained from Ms. Link when I detained her.
Let's talk about that cell phone warrant, and we'll go to the Chevy Trax warrant in a moment, but that cell phone belonged to the defendant?
It belonged to the defendant, yes.
And do you know what number was associated with that cell phone?
Oh, I know it's 786562. I can't remember the last four. I'm sorry.
If your report will refresh your recollection, please refer to your report.
The cell phone number's not on here.
Okay, I'll move on then.
Okay.
Was that warrant executed?
Yes, it was.
And why did you obtain a search warrant for the defendant's cell phone?
So when we were doing the residential search warrant, there was Ring camera, so we believe that there was a Ring camera app on the cell phone.
Now, when you executed that warrant, what, if anything, of evidentiary value did you yourself observe?
I watched Ring camera footage.
Let's talk about that cell phone for a moment as well. Was there also a warrant to further get into that cell phone?
Yeah, so the warrant is to be able to search the device.
And you authored that?
I authored it, and I'm the one that went through the process of getting it granted.
Okay. And do you have to turn that phone over to somebody to actually execute that warrant as well?
Yeah, we provided to a forensics analyst,
Do you recall what analyst received the phone?
Sergeant Sergio Cremesini.
Are you aware if he executed, was able to get into the phone?
He was.
Was he able to download the contents of that phone?
Yes, he did.
Showing defense counsel to previously marked for identification purposes. And without objection, moving it into evidence, Your Honor.
That's correct, but if we can go side work quickly.
I'm sorry, Ray. Go ahead. Finish your statement of evidence.
Stay exhibit 1F, marked for identification, now becomes stay exhibit 16, Judge.
16.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead before we talk about that actual video itself. At the point in time that you're executing those warrants and reviewing this evidence, is the defendant on scene?
No, she's not.
Where was she?
She was transported to the Miami-Dade headquarters, which is where our office is.
Who else was there?
Detective Melanie Jimenez and Detective Joseph Cruz.
Okay. Did you relay the information that you learned about the Ring camera to them?
Yes, I did.
And do you know what they were doing at the point in time that you relayed this information to them?
They were attempting to interview DaisyLink.
Okay. Now, what, if anything, did you do next?
At that point, we had already executed the search warrants.
Okay.
I relayed the information to Detective Jimenez.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you canvass the area?
So we did an area canvas for surveillance footage, yeah.
What is an area canvas? Can you
So we're essentially going door by door, all the neighbors, trying to see if anybody heard, saw anything, or if they have any surveillance footage at their residence.
now, were you successful in locating any additional cameras?
So there was one residence that did have surveillance footage that we observed.
Do you know where that residence was?
So the address is 1300 Northwest 15th Street.
Do you recall about how far away from the incident location that residence is?
It's not far at all.
Like right around the corner?
Yeah, right around the corner.
Did you make contact with the homeowner?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall his name?
Robert or Roberto Cisneros.
Did he advise that he had surveillance cameras?
He did. He allowed us into his residence to view them.
Now, you viewed those cameras yourselves?
I did.
Before we talk about what you saw on those, was there any evidence that Mr. Cisneros had destroyed, altered, or tampered in any way with those cameras?
No, not at all.
Was there any wires that were cut?
None that I observed, no.
Anything destroyed?
No.
Okay. And did you watch those cameras with Mr. Cisneros?
Yeah, he allowed us into his home and allowed us, essentially they're experts in their own system. So he allowed us and showed us what was on his cameras.
What did those cameras show?
Judge, I would object to this. You know that it's already been presented to you.
Or your objection. You can answer.
So the victim is observed on the cameras walking westbound down an alleyway. He appears to be slumped over, not slumped over, but kind of like dragging himself. He hides in some bushes. At that point, we see a vehicle that drives eastbound in the alleyway. After that, we see the victim come back out of that bushy area of the backyard and eventually collapse on the ground.
Did you, you said you saw a vehicle. Do you recall what vehicle that was?
It's the vehicle, the Chevy Trax that was initially on scene.
Okay, and that's the same Chevy Trax that you authored a search warrant for?
Yes.
And that same Chevy Trax had a search warrant that was granted and executed on?
Yes.
Did you see anything else on those cameras?
You could see a person, female, who I believe was DaisyLink at that time, to go up to the body of the victim. At some point, she goes up to the body, manipulates the body of some sort, go back to the vehicle, and then come back to the body.
Now, you yourself are not a video retrieval detective, correct?
I am not.
Okay. Now, when you want to take possession of certain videos, certain surveillance videos, do you also call out for those officers?
Yeah, so there's a video forensics unit that will respond, and they are the experts in all types of systems, and they retrieve the footage that we request from them.
The video that you just described, was that consistent with anything else that was on scene?
Consistent with the blood trail that we had seen on scene, the vehicle matching the key is all that we had obtained. that was pretty much it.
Do you know if there was a time delay at all between when a 911 call went out to when the victim may or may not have been shot?
Yes, I believe it was about 10 minutes.
Okay. And are you aware if that footage that you just described also is consistent with a time delay in that?
Yeah, like I mentioned, you can see the female coming out of the vehicle, going back and forth from inside the vehicle into the body. And that's consistent with the 10 minutes of time delay.
Now, I want to go back to the conversation that we had about Detective Jimenez, Detective Cruz, and what you viewed on ring camera footage. Now, I know that you said that they were in the middle of attempting to speak to Ms. Link, right?
Yes.
Now, what, if anything, did you specifically relate to them?
So I had watched a ring camera video on the phone that depicted Ms. Link with a firearm, and some audio that was attached to that video as well. I asked Detective Jimenez to be a text if she was free. She called me. I informed her with that information.
Permission to publish evidence, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now playing what has been entered into evidence, portion of state's evidence 16. Just going to skip ahead around 5 minutes. Detective, we heard what sounded like a pop. Was that consistent with anything?
With gunfire.
Okay. And to be clear, this is the video that you relate, the information that you watched and relayed to Detective Jimenez?
Yeah, it was on the Ring app from her phone. I watched it and I gave the information to Detective Jimenez.
And by her phone, who do you mean?
DaisyLink's phone.
Okay. And this video itself is inconsistent with anything that officers learned on scene.
Objection, calls for a conclusion, being promised.
It's the same, he's gonna ask another question.
At this point in time, did you believe you knew who shot Pedro Jimenez? After watching
Objection
this?
being promised to the jury.
It's the same, he's gonna ask another question.
Momentary for Your Honor. Ask this. Detective, what did we hear Ms. Link say on video?
I mean, it's very grainy in this video. It's a lot more clear when I watched it, but it talks about hitting a major artery. It talks about DaisyLink saying you'll be fine, and then asking, "Are you sure you don't want to go to the hospital?"
I have nothing further on.
So, sir, other than what we just heard right now in that video, is there any other audio in that video that's, in your view, relevant or important to this matter?
There was you can hear a male in the beginning of the video. You can't really tell. It sounds very far out.
Can't tell?
I can't tell.
You didn't think that what was in there was important or relevant to your investigation?
It is relevant, yes.
Okay.
You go to bottom.
So I was thinking she hit it.
That sound like, do it, I want to die! Is that what that sounded like to you? Is that what that sounded like to you?
To be honest, sir, the only thing I can hear from here is the word die. I can't hear anything else.
Okay.
Sorry.
Would you agree that that was Pedro Jimenez saying that? Screaming that, actually.
Overruled, yes.
It's unknown, but based on the information that we know, they were the only two there, so it can be assumed that that was him, yes.
Okay. So you would agree that this video shows that Pedro Jimenez was screaming, do it, or well, something that sounded like, do it, I want to die, shortly before he was shot.
I can say that I hear Pedro Jimenez saying the word die. I can't hear anything else in there.
You can't make out the rest?
I can't make out with this video right now. I can't make out.
That's all right. The jury probably can.
Okay.
All right. So you were the one who arrested Mrs. Link, correct?
I detained Mrs. Link
You put cuffs on her?
with the assistance of officers from Homestead Police Department.
Well, who's the one who put cuffs on her?
It was either me or one of the officers that assisted me. I believe it was me or Nicholson.
You don't remember if it was you?
Not 100%, no.
Okay. When you put the cuffs on her, did you do it in front of her 7-year-old child? Did you do it in front of her 7-year-old child?
I believe the children were inside the residence.
They weren't present?
They're in the residence.
So they were there right in front of you when that happened, right?
No.
Overruled. Were you referring to that one?
No.
All right. Crystal Barreto, you said that on the scene, was it on the scene where you met with her?
Right outside of the scene, crime scene tape,
So-
to the intersection.
So you're saying you approached her, and then when you approached her, without you asking anything or saying anything, she spontaneously made that statement to you?
No, there was conversation initially about who I was, my purpose of being there. The purpose of why they were called to the scene to begin with was essentially for them to get the children.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you were concerned about Miss Link being on the scene. Is that right?
That's correct.
Were you aware that she was told she couldn't leave the scene?
I was not aware.
Would that change your concern if you had known that?
No, at the end of the day, my job is to maintain and make sure that that scene is taken care of and no evidence is tampered with. And upon my arrival, I witnessed somebody essentially sitting in the middle of the scene.
Well, it sounded like, correct me if I'm wrong, but a moment ago, when you were asked about it, you made it sound like she was there somewhere where she was not supposed to be. Was that your belief at the time?
I'm not saying that she wasn't supposed to be there. At the end of the day, that's her residence. What I am saying is that that is a crime scene and no one other than police officers should be in that crime scene.
Agreed.
And the deceased person.
Agreed. But up until a moment ago, according to your testimony, you didn't know that she had been told that she couldn't leave.
If I wasn't there, I'm not aware of what the officers may or may not have told her.
So you weren't aware of that until a moment ago. Is that correct?
I don't understand your question, sir.
You weren't aware that an officer told her you can't leave until I told you a moment ago. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can you hear?
Officer, was there any evidence, let me ask you this, was there any evidence of the victim having a weapon on him?
No, there was not.
Was there a firearm found on him?
There was not.
Was there a knife found on him?
There was not.
So him saying, I want to die, to Daisy, she was pointing a gun at him at that point in time?
Objection, calls for speculation.
It's the same.
Judge, can we go sidebar?
So, you're gonna ask the question.
The point in time that Pedro says that, is there any evidence whatsoever that he was armed?
There was no evidence that Pedro was armed with any type of weapon.
Was there evidence that Daisy Link was armed?
Yeah, the video shows that.
And she's armed with what?
A firearm.
So it'd be a likely conclusion then, we'll actually strike that. And that same firearm was found on scene?
Later on in that day, yes, it was.
And that firearm that was used to kill Pedro Jimenez?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Judge, briefly, just based on your question.
Go ahead.
The firearm that was found on scene later on, it was found because Daisy Link told you where to look, right?
Actually, no, sir.
No?
No.
Did you find it?
I was present when it was found.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You can ask that question.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, folks, I'm going to give you an instruction. It's essentially a limiting structure. This detective testified about steps he took in his investigation. So to the extent that Crystal Barreto made a statement to him, that informs his decision-making as a detective on scene. It doesn't go to the truth of what Crystal Barreto told him, okay? Another limiting instruction. His conclusions of what the video shows and what he believes is said on the video also informs his decision-making as a detective. At the end of the day, what's in the video and what is said on video is subject to your interpretation and yours alone. You should not rely on any other testifying witnesses' conclusions of that. You are the triers of fact. You review the evidence and you come to your own independent conclusions of what the evidence says and what it shows. Why don't you just take a quick break in the jury room? Thank you.
Yeah, that detective, he wasn't very nice. Let's make sure that
Jury's over there. I thought that was necessary. Walk in. I probably should have walked in on access to the record. Go ahead and let them know now.
Judge, I'm just going to object. I don't believe that. I understand the second period of instruction. You and I had a trial similar. I understand that one. The first objection, I do not believe the court is sua sponte to be that period. I do not believe it comes close to it being.
I don't know why that detective was being unfair like that. Why would you say that in open court in front of the jury?
Because it directly goes to the investigation, her becoming a subject at that point in time. It's an excited utterance, excuse me, a spontaneous statement, which in and of itself is the exception to the hearsay rule. It was not a offer for treatment matters or but for the purposes of eliciting a spontaneous statement. I do not.
Does it inform the next steps of the investigation?
It does, but I don't think that is for the court to instruct the jury on. I understand why the court did it, but.
Well, I'd like to do this once, and I'd like to do this fairly once. We should go last to one access to record.
No.
Okay. Any objections to giving limited instructions to the jury?
No.
For what it's worth, it goes hand in hand with jury instructions about coming to their own conclusions about the evidence. All right, let's take a 10-30. How many other witnesses you guys have today?
I think this is a good stopping point for today.
So
We have 3 witnesses left. The Melanie Norris, our ME, and our phone witness. Those are going to be the lengthier of the testimonies. I understand you want to go to 4:30, but as I mentioned this morning, I think this is the stopping point because at this point in time, it's the defendant's statement and her cell phone and
how long do you think this is going to be tomorrow?
I mean, the medical examiner takes about an hour, hour and a half. Same thing with the phone up expert. There's a handful of things that I want to present for him. And then the defendant's statement is more or less 2 hours. And then we're done. We're planning on resting that.
The substance of the statement is 2 hours.
I would say somewhere around that. I haven't done all the redactions and everything of it.
Jimenez is not here for us.
She's not.
What about
It's hard to hear him.
She's not either, and I have not yet had an opportunity to sit down.
All right, I'll take your word that we have 3 more witnesses to go, and then we'll rest tomorrow. So Mr. Galas is going to on a case. It's probably going to be Monday. I'm sorry, Tuesday.
Can I get the
We've
phone?
already discussed that. We have 2 depositions scheduled for Monday.
You're okay with that schedule?
Yes, ma'am.
If you have on a case Tuesday. All right, so I guess I'll bring the jury out and listen to it. Okay, so I'm gonna.
All right, so the jurors.
The jury's coming back.
While 9 jurors are accounted for, we can see it, lawyers and legal is also. All right, folks, for the state's case in chief, there's 3 more witnesses. Those will call tomorrow. I know we're a little off schedule. We're not going to end at 5:30. We're going to end now. The state will finish their case tomorrow. Remember, we all cleared each other's schedule for next week, so you can anticipate being back on Tuesday. Tomorrow we'll count again, 10:30 to 5:30, we end a little early, try that in on Friday afternoon. I'm going to release you in a few minutes. Again, just like we did yesterday, we'll coordinate with Roberto, we're meet with them in this building. Please do not do any research about this case. Please do not look up the places or people that you've heard about. Please don't discuss this case with anyone else. I trust that you're going to follow my instructions. Again, if anyone talks to you about this case, please report it to me and or Roberto. I think that's all.
Yes.
As regarding the warnings that if you see any other witnesses, please ignore them. They're instructed to ignore you as well. All right, there's nothing else, any other instructions? Okay, thank you all. See you tomorrow, and please keep your time. You guys are work today. We can start on time next tomorrow. 10:30, we'll start, so everybody else can get to 10:30.
Yes, ma'am. For 10:15.
I wanted to take on record for the last regarding the cumulativeness of Morales testifying about what he saw on the video that Cisneros already testified to. Remember the body worn camera that was already introduced shows the scene with Mr. Jimenez. And so to the extent that you thought that Morales was testifying to was somehow detrimental to your client, I think that's why you rejected regarding, well, he used the word manipulate the body, right? But from what we saw from the body on camera,
Judge, that's a different, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's two different things, right? There's body on camera where the defendant is seen standing over the victim as he dies, but then also the video that he was describing is the defendant who will be saying in her statement that she went in and was removing items from his pockets. That's what he was talking about.
okay, sorry, I thought it was along the lines of the body on camera shows her upset and trying to render aid. You're saying that that's different from what?
That's a different video itself. So there's the video that Detective Morales viewed with Robert Cisneros, which does not show that because that wasn't captured. It shows the defendant exiting a vehicle, going up to the victim's body, removing items from the victim's body, going back to the shedding tracks, putting them in there, which is consistent with other evidence that's already been introduced, and then going back to the victim.
What's in the shedding tracks that would be on Mr. Jimenez?
I believe it was his wallet and his phone, if I'm not mistaken.
None of that was introduced.
It was. There's photographs of
Tempting. But the point I was trying to make is, I believe that Morales' testimony on the issue of video is, while it might be argued as cumulative, it's not harmless in view of the context of what's already been introduced regarding the body worn camera.
It's not harmless.
No, at all. He's gonna, I'm sorry, harmful. I think this is the defense is going to say something along the lines of harmful. There's 23 minutes of body worn camera where she's distraught, trying to assist him, trying to reiterate. Can you show me the photographs of what's in evidence?
Yeah.
Or what's in her car?
And I know there's at least one photo of like a $100 bill or something like that as well.
That I thought was on the,
Do you guys want to- on this? Yes, it was. Yeah, you know this better than me. For the Chevy Trax, and there was yes.
So tracks on the phone.
Yes.
Was Morales.
Correct.
Yes, Judge.
So Judge, I was mistaken. I thought we introduced the photos of the wallet. We didn't.
Oh, see, I'm not.
We did introduce
I'm
photos.
inventing things that I think are missing, right?
We-
I don't need a power like that. I'm just trying to keep track of
No, of
everything.
course.
And everybody knows this is not space. When you're looking at it from a 30,000 foot view,
I thought it was in the packet that we had put
you may
together.
not be compartmentalizing like you're supposed to. Can I see it?
That there's photos of the car though, right?
One photo of the outside of it, not the inside.
There's photos of the Chevy Trax itself.
So which witness is supposed to introduce these items?
That would have been Officer Zapata.
Oh, it's exhibit 12.
Yes,
So it's an evidence.
yes. Not the Chevy Trax. It's in itself is in evidence, which the
That
defendant is
judge
seen
is
exiting.
really hard to
Which is
hear.
now also in evidence as well, via the defendant's phone dump. We see her get inside the vehicle and drive off, as well as arrive on scene.
12 is $100 bill.
Right.
Is there a packet of photographs relating to what was seized from the Chevy Trax?
We're not going to be introducing what was seized via the search warrant.
So how is her manipulating the body from Morales? Is it just to show that she was near the body?
That she, well, so her testimony via her statement will be introduced tomorrow. In her statement, she says, detectives confront her with, you pulled something out of his pockets. She says, I had to in order to stop the bleeding or something because his pants were tight. That is corroborative of the video that Robert Cisneros, Detective Morales, and I believe Detective Hubbard also testified to, in which they themselves viewed Miss Link getting outside the car, approaching the body, going up to the body, taking items out of the body.
So that's the relevance.
Yes, and then returning back to that vehicle.
Are there photographs of what was in her car that you all believe, you can reasonably argue was on Mr. Jimenez?
Yes, those exist. Unfortunately, we didn't put them in the packet. We're going to call Detective Zapata now and make sure that she comes back so we can get those last few photographs into evidence.
Does that make sense? Why I'm bringing this up? Because I was concerned with your objection, but I thought that what was on the body camera was essentially evidence that it's a little bit different than Morales' testimony, but now I can appreciate why, Morales' testimony and the quote-unquote manipulated the law is different than what's on the file.
Right.
Does that make sense, Mr.
Yeah,
Lawrence,
it's
right?
just, yes.
What is it that she was from?
I believe it's his wallet and his cell phone.
And she says those guys were away from her and they.
Correct. She says his pants were really tight and she had to get his pants off.
You're not accusing her of stealing.
No,
from the body.
no.
So it's just a question of, I guess, why she was over the body and how did things that you believe were on this person ended up.
Correct.
Should we go over or you guys gonna go over that, her statement? And then we'll go on to that?
So there's a couple things I think that is important that we do discuss, and I was gonna bring it up if you didn't. I intend to, so the entire statement itself is about 11 hours, give or take. I am not going to publish, and I'm piecing them together, any point in time when the defendant is alone in that room. I'm also going to be removing, when the defendant changes, she changes on camera. I don't think it's appropriate to look at that or give that to the jury. I'm also going to be removing the portion of the defendant being read Miranda for the first time and invoking Miranda. I do intend to have Detective Janoris testify to, I was getting her fingerprinted. She approached me, said something spontaneous to the effect of, I had to do it or something like that. So then Detective Janoris says, in order for me to speak to you, I have to read Miranda. Then she does read Miranda. So that will all be.
I wish that the judge would speak in more mind.
I'm not intending to have anything mentioned about her invoking whatsoever. I don't think I can.
Just want to object to that, I guess, redaction from first Miranda waiver into second one,
No objection.
because I think at the end of the day, you probably won't understand that, right? As a matter of strategy, I mean, look, you can, if you want to cross-examine on the reality of the Miranda waiver, you can, but.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, I was going to say there is case law that says it is reversible error to discuss about the invocation of Miranda, even subsequent with a waiving of Miranda. I don't want to get anywhere near that.
You don't think they would be able to review?
I don't want to.
If it was a challenge about knowing the voluntary waiver of the Miranda, I think the jury would be able to know if there was a first and second.
I don't want to go near it because I don't, as this court has mentioned a few times already, I don't want this case coming back.
Okay, I think as a matter of strategy, Ms. Lim, does that make sense? As a matter of strategy, the statement that you gave the police is probably better if it's introduced in this case, right?
I mean, yeah, I prefer it to be introduced, but I would also prefer that the first Miranda, I also be published to the jury as well, if they know.
Judge, if the defendant is willing to waive any and all appellate rights with that issue, I'll do it. I think it's silly. I think it's reversible. But if she's willing to right now waive any appellate rights to that issue, which I do think is reversible error if I introduce that.
Why don't we do this? Since we ended early, you and Sheila want to talk about it, and I'll have another discussion with you and him tomorrow about that. The reason I haven't looked over the case law, I'm not saying this would be wrong, I'm going to defer to him right now because I haven't looked at that authority. But the purpose of just going into the second Miranda waiver is really to streamline, to make this move a little quicker. And since the second Miranda doesn't refer to the first one, the jury's not going to be confused about what you told the police after waiving your Miranda waiver. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but at this point, God forbid, they find the jury finds me guilty, at least I have a better shot at you.
We're going to talk to Mr. I'm going to do some research on my own, and we'll talk about the redactions. So you guys are ready to talk about redactions now?
I can talk about them in the general sense. I have certain timestamps, but I don't have the specifics. What I can tell the court is I'm intending to redact all testimony from the defendant about any arrests of anybody, including my victim and herself. Defense counsel said, I believe it was last week, that he, as far as the second phase of this, should the defendant be found guilty, I said that the only thing that would be coming into evidence is Ms. Link saying she was arrested in the past. Defense counsel said it should be redacted. I agree. But I'm also going to be redacting the portions about my victim being arrested as well. This court has already ruled that those things are not relevant based off of the age of those. Furthermore, I don't think that there is anybody that can authenticate any of his convictions or arrests. The defendant can absolutely testify about this being a volatile relationship, a toxic relationship. I intend to elicit testimony from my detectives.
Any incident from 5 days before?
Sure. I intend to ask my detectives, did Ms. Link advise of acts of violence committed by Pedro Jimenez? Did she also, against her, did she also advise of acts of violence that she committed against him? That is the extent that I'm going to elicit any testimony, no arrest or anything
General
else.
acts not related to arrest, which again, an arrest by law enforcement indicates some sort of, for lack of a better phrase, stamp of approval that somehow the police believe that there was enough to arrest
Correct.
by party.
The age of, sorry, no, go ahead.
But it goes to the up and down or the the toxic nature of a relationship.
Exactly. There's another portion in time when I believe Ms. Link says to Detective Janoris something to the effect of being a victim of domestic violence or something like that against me, and I don't want to call her Melanie. Detective Janoris says, well, you also have been arrested. It goes both ways. I'm also going to be redacting that portion as well. And it's not like beat for beat. It is a very quick, rapid fire conversation.
And
That
then I read the instruction that lets them know it's redacted.
Yes.
They should not
yes,
guess as to what was redacted.
yes.
But that's not final yet until it's.
I need to go to lid support and sit down with them and get all those things. We have been able to cut out the portion of time that the defendant is alone, but we need to go through and actually timestamp the portion in time that we need to redact. And then as soon as I get that, I know that they leave. Some of them leave at 4:30, some of them leave at 5. I'm going to do my best to go and speak with them and get those things done. As soon as I get that done from them, I'll send it to Mr. Tomas, even if it's in the morning.
But you've gone over the defense, the areas that you want to redact.
No, because I don't mean to be glib about this. I literally decided today that I was going to be introducing this statement.
So it's proper general areas of action.
And I have the transcript, so I'm sure I don't think it'll be a problem.
And if we have to, I'll start with a different witness, even if I have to start with the medical examiner first in the morning, so that way we can go over the statement itself and then go from there.
That's fine. So what we'll do is, why don't we have a speak tomorrow at 10 a.m. so that if you have anything done, you can go over it.
Absolutely.
And if it's not done, we can still through the actual transfers, we can highlight, underline, so that your video folks know which part will be redacted.
Sure.
And then we'll do the research on the case law link about the first Miranda, maybe coming in, not coming in, and whether or not you're going to be in a position to waive any of that. All right, anything else that we have to come up, talk about before we adjourn the day?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
See you all tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's easy enough. I have somewhere.
Officer, can you give me a few minutes? I appreciate that. Our camera, can you cut it off? We're gonna give them a few minutes. Thank you. Stay tuned.
All right, y'all, that finishes out today. We'll be back tomorrow, and I think they got closing arguments. So in the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I very much appreciate it, and subscribing is free. All right, y'all, have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.